Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. But it's all tricks aside, because tonight we're turning the paranormal into the normal. Join me as we explore the gray areas of reality. We're going to talk all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and aliens, and see how it's all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and we are live. So if you're an experiencer yourself, or you're just plain nosy, be sure to send me your question and subscribe to the podcast. Now, get ready, because it's going to get deep. No, really, we're going to go way out there, because this is Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. What's happening, my paranormal junkies? Welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, and I'm your host, Danny Whitson. Guys, we are broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 in New Orleans. Guys, we got a fantastic show for you tonight. An amazing guest. This is his second time on the Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. So, that's becoming a special club because very few people have been here twice. So that means, we got a great guest if we want him to come back. But anyways, I hope you guys are doing great. Get your questions lined up for the chat tonight. It's been a crazy week. A lot of weird things are kind of happening. I don't know if you're kind of following the paranormal, UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it, world. But it seems like the drone activity has calmed down a little bit. They're just not talking about it much. But as far as we know, it's still happening. And from what I hear, whenever President Trump gets in office, he says he's going to address it first thing. So fingers crossed. Let's see what happens there. But anyways, before we start the show, I think we want to bring on everyone's favorite sidekick here. Mr. Behind the Scenes, too nice to be mean, Mr. Chris Green. There he is. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. How was your week?
My week was good. Trump wants to make Canada the 51st state now.
Oh, I know that's. So I don't know, man. We may be countrymen.
yeah, right.
Any Greenland people? So take a vacation down to the Gulf of America.
Oh, so, I'd love to.
Yeah, I shared a meme on my Facebook page. It was the What a Gulf. Because Whataburger's everywhere, so they're just going to name it What a Gulf. I think that would be pretty funny. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. He says that when he hops in there, he's going to spill the beans on the drones. So
that'd be cool.
That would be cool. So there we go. Our fingers crossed. Maybe we'll hear something. But so I've got some of your stuff down here in Tennessee this past weekend. It snowed.
Yeah, I heard.
So which shuts the world down where I'm from. But I did tell everybody, I was like, hey man, I know some Canadians and they're tough. This stuff makes you tough. So
I'd drive in that.
But yeah, it was awful. But I'm glad it's over. But it's still cold. Well, all right, man. So looks like other than that, everything else going smooth in your world. Good deal. And no jokes for me tonight?
No. Not tonight.
Nothing he can say on air, folks. All right. Well, I tell you what, Chris, all right, get ready for a heck of a show because we got a great guest tonight. Yes, and everybody say hi to Chris, bye to Chris, peace out, and we'll see you next week, bro. All right, guys, you ready for tonight's guest? I know I am. Let me pull this up. And I already said I wasn't going to screw his name up, and I probably will, so I apologize, Mike. But here we go. Tonight's guest, he's a professor of English at City Tech, New York. Mike Fiorito is a freelance journalist and an award-winning author. For All We Know was the book that we talked about last time he was here. It's Mike's UFO-themed science fiction novel published back in May, and now he's got a brand new book too that we're going to talk about. It's the UFO Symphonic-Journeys into Sound, which that just sounds freaking interesting, dude. That just sounds cool. So, but last time he was here, we had a heck of a conversation, great time, and I'm looking forward to doing it all over again tonight. Guys, let's get a big round of applause for Mike Fiorito.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? What's going on, Dan?
Doing
Nice
good,
to see
Mike.
you, man.
And I do apologize if I jacked up the last name. You know, it's just
That's okay.
It's so common.
Hey, you brought me back to. It's okay. People struggle with it, but like you said, you brought me back a second time. Usually, people invite me back the second time, but for me to apologize. So thank you very much for that.
I've been my whole life. I've been Danny Winston. I've been Danny Watson. I've been, one time an MC brought me up. I don't know what this kid was thinking. Danny Whitewash, ladies and gentlemen. I was like, whitewash? What are you talking about? So I'm used to my last name being jacked up too. But I tell you what, mine. If you don't care, do you care to maybe give a little more in depth for the viewers, people who may not know? So a little bit better introduction to what I gave you.
Oh, sure. Well, I think you were right on, and I hate to I hate like long kind of bio introductions, but I'll just say that I'm a writer, author, and journalist. So I've written widely about everything. I've written, write for newspapers, magazines. I do have some subject matter that I really do zero in on and focus on. And the last time that I was here, I talked about my book For All We Know, which was a kind of a fictionalized. It read like a memoir, and I wanted it to read like those were my experiences, because some of them were, but I also wanted the liberty to fictionalize. So I wasn't contained in some journalistic box there. And UFO Symphonic is a follow-up to that. Really, it's a nonfiction book. And so what I do in this book is connect the phenomena. So it's the UFO phenomena. It could be UFO, it could be ghosts, it could be cryptids, like you said at your introduction. It could be things we just don't understand, and how that can have a music or a sound component. So you notice it says journeys into sound, and that's something I discovered as I was writing the book. I'm a music journalist, so I've done a lot of go to shows, write up stuff. And I wouldn't say I'm not a critic, I'm an enthusiast. I know you're from Tennessee. We talked about bluegrass. I'm guy from New York City, but I love bluegrass. So go figure. Well, it's great music, that's the bottom line. And so what I discovered as I was writing this book and really researching and gathering people's stories, they're not all mine. So I kind of inserted people's stories from the UFO community, basically anyone that wanted to share a story. I did kind of qualify it. I wanted it to be, all I wanted is it's true. Tell me something that is inexplicable that is associated with music. That was really the criteria. And I got some wonderful stories. And I do I don't interpret anyone's story. What I do is kind of lay out, what is this thing? What is this thing called music? Why do we do music? Why do human beings do music? And the fact is we don't know. We believe that humans began singing before we began speaking. So the anatomy of that allows for singing, which by the way allows for crying, allows for other kind of interestingly connected to emotion. But it's deep. It's deep in our consciousness and unconsciousness. And so I really
well, I was want to ask, do any
please.
other mammals sing? Do apes or
Sure. Great question. So first of all, birds sing, whales, there are lots of animals that sing. There are primates that sing. So that's a great question. Gorillas actually have favorite eating songs. So like while they're munching on their favorite, they have a song that they yeah, it's their favorite song. And there are primates that will use kind of, we'll call it singing, vocalizations to rally up the troops, to kind of communicate. There's pecking order, and who's at the top of the food chain. But you'll hear monkeys go, "Ah, ah, ah, ooh, 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 ooh." um, but it's more than just singing. Sometimes there are more complex vocalizations, um, but it's using sound. And I just found that that's super interesting, because for us, what I'm saying here is that music is a contact modality. And for some people, that could be contact with the dead. That could be contact with another non-human intelligence. Music is so complex, and we can go at it in so many ways, as I came to learn. Just say, for instance, you're from Tennessee. You're not too far from Mississippi, but just say the music of the Delta. Just think of
Mhm.
what went into the creation of that music. This
Oh my gosh.
the right, the African rhythms, British Isles melodies, the instrumentations. Not to mention the hardships and the lives and how this thing was created. Put that together with what is the Delta itself? What is this land mass? What is this thing? And how this music then becomes, taken up by groups like Led Zeppelin, and
Yeah.
they put it on a big canvas, putting it, melding it with British Isles music, and you have this whole other interpretation. But more than that, there's just, have you ever listened, Danny? You just listen to music and you think, I often feel when I'm hearing like the sounds of birds, or music itself, you feel like there's something being said. I just don't know what it is.
Oh yeah,
That's
all the time, man. I mean, I now a lot of times though, I think I've got a bird that's singing Marvin Gaye outside my window about 5 a.m. every morning. Let's get it on. And I'm like, shit. But
yeah,
but no, and this is something interesting too, because we talk about all the other creatures, animals, and stuff that sing or use music. And you remember a popular movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Didn't wasn't it
exactly.
almost music is a communication source? You know,
Yeah,
uh, that's interesting. Because it makes you wonder if that's something else, another way, because it's another way of communicating across universal. You know, maybe other
right. I mean,
dimensions.
as it happens, yeah. I mean, and that's a great point. It's in the book, and it's even to the extent a human on the human level. So, I can go to Nigeria, and I don't speak the language, I don't speak, but I could listen to the music. And in fact, it could be moving, and it could be emotive, and it could, have a great effect on me. But it, understand it. Even if I don't like music from wherever, I I mean, there's music from this country that could be hard to like, right?
Oh my
I took my
gosh.
wife I took my wife to see Fred Frith, who was a member of Henry Cow, and he's very experimental stuff. And his music, there were three musicians. One was, I think, a cello player, I don't remember, or a violin player. And he does stuff like, he has keyboards, he has a guitar, like a fretboard with just the neck itself. And then he has magnets, and it's all on a platform that's mic'd. And so the magnets, like you'll hear like, he'll do these kind of interesting sounds. And my wife looks at me after 10 minutes and she goes, "You owe me. You owe me." Because, from her perspective, it was not, I could hear this was like chamber music. They were kind of playing together in this very, they were superb musicians. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
different kind of thing. So you got to take it for what it is. Um, But I could feel that. I mean, it was basically like kids having fun, making sounds that were interesting, and then each of them following the other.
Well,
You
see,
know, and you
that's the cool thing with you, Mike, is you're a music geek. All right.
mm,
And see, it takes a music geek to appreciate. I'm at the point in my life that I hate anything new. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. You know, So and I've tried not to be that guy. I've tried so hard not to be that guy, but it's like it just happens. And I'm like,
yeah,
if it isn't, I'm trying. Every now and then I will hear something that some talent, and I think, well, this person's very talented. This is really good, but it's to me it just seems it's so rare, and maybe it's just that we're engulfed with so much information these days. There's just so much out there that you got to weed through the garbage before you find the good stuff. Maybe I
yeah,
I'm trying to be a
yeah, and
little.
I do understand. I really do. You're trying to be nice
Well, let
about it.
me let me. I could sit here and roast music for an hour. The bad stuff, anyways. But here I do want to bring it to this. Let's talk about because like I said, it is UFO themed. A lot of your stuff's connected, and I love the way you have kind of used your imagination with this. On the story side of things, taking actual real things or some experiences and beefing it up a little bit, which I love. Um, but let me ask you this though, this because the world was a little different last time you were here. Me and you our minds were blown because of what UAP hearings that were happening and stuff. But what do you think about like what's happening here with the drones and stuff flying in the skies and
Mm.
and all the UAP sightings? What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I've talked to. It's interesting, and if I could just say, when you're in the UFO community, I have lots of friends. Some have different degrees of access of knowledge. Um, I don't really know anyone in, say, the military kind of thing. Um, but just based on what I've gathered, and I'd like to know what you think, it seems as if you never know what the government is. It some kind of psyops thing? Are they kind of hiding something in plain sight? Are they preparing us for something? Are they, the world is in a state right now of there's a lot of shift of power structure, who's running what, and this is globally.
Yeah,
And who knows? Is it there have been just as many um, sightings of metal structures that are drones as there have been of plasma type
yeah.
things that are kind of looking fractal. And so it's we all know the government has been deeply interested in UFO subject. They're deeply interested in things like remote viewing and psi, all kinds of psi experiments. And and if I may, I want to give a shout out to my friend. He didn't want to be named, but he was showing me this cool remote viewing stuff, and I could tell he got emotional. And I was getting ready, prepared for this. So I just want you to know, I was hearing you, I was seeing what you were saying, and just so moved by he was showing me, how, and I feel this way, and I'm sure you do, that you feel like you're beginning to understand things. Here I am, I'm getting into, I understand the other layers, the how things interconnect, and I could see he was moved by it, and I was moved by it, and um, I probably didn't show it. So if you hear me, brother, I heard you. Um, and so just back to your point, it's so damn hard to say because the government,
it's
ever since there's have been. Yeah, go
it
ahead, please.
It is, and just to touch real quick on remote viewing, I want to say this: I'm very interested in remote viewing. Before starting this, hosting this podcast, a year ago, if you would ask me about remote viewing, I'd have been like, that's probably garbage, But the more and more I've talked to people and learned about it, no, it's very real, and
Yeah.
it's something now that I'm extremely interested in. But with the drones, I, I do think that it is what a lot that we're seeing that's been reported is man-made tech.
Hmm.
But But what they don't talk about, and this is what only the people in the UFO community really are aware of, that these plasma shape shifting type things that are flying around in the sky exist. These odd shape, they change shapes. These things have been happening, and I don't think they know what those are. And I don't think, I don't think or if they do know what they are, that's what they're not talking about.
Yeah.
And in my whole belief system, this is where I'm at right now with UFOs and, or what UAPs, whatever you want to call them. I probably think the majority of the things that are flying around right now is reversed alien technology, and we have cracked the code of something. I think a private company is the one that is doing these things. That way, the government can use money loopholes, and they can keep failing their audits, and there's no way for them, for it to be traced. I think the government likes to keep things disembodied, all screwed up. It's hard to find an answer in a big pile of mess than it is a very well organized place, and the government is not very well organized. So,
yeah,
I think they're keeping it just like how they like it, and I don't think though we'll get full disclosure until if you call them aliens, interdimensional beings, force our hand. So, but
yeah, I
you're
hear
right.
you.
The world is, and the world is a very crazy, changing place right now. And World War III is still a very, very well, strong possibility. I don't know. 2025 makes me a little nervous.
I hear you, and I'm not sure, but I hear there are leprechauns in Greenland. I don't know, but that's where I'm going. But just to make fun of that a little bit, I think the government hides these things in plain sight, and
Oh
I
yeah,
think I've said that. And the thing is I think that they know. There's no doubt they know that there's a there because they're studying it. They're very curious. There are programs. There's serious tech and research. The thing is, they don't know what it is partially. So they know there's something there. They don't really know what it is. And I also think that um, keeping us from our own divinity is a goal. If you have the ability, Danny, if you have the ability to have telekinetic powers to pull something out of the sky to make the moon move, that's terrifying to a government that believes
that can be
it's in
dangerous.
control. And I think that's partly what's going on is they know, and we all know. I mean, it's sort of like to me, it's nothing new. It's like we know the waters are polluted. We know the soil is. Uh, we know that there's that some of the food we eat is not real food. I mean, we all know it. It's it's just it's just allowed to happen. I mean, you have Congress is discussing this. You have Grush, you have Ryan Graves, you have just today I watched something, listened to something on Jesse Michaels, and this guy came out and said uh, he saw tech, and he saw these bizarre things he couldn't comprehend, um, and people are coming out, and yet most people, most of the population is sort of like, yeah, whatever, what's on, let me see what's on,
Yeah,
what's on whatever channel. And I'm not putting that down. I think that when the UFO calls or whatever that could be, maybe it's an apparition, maybe it's a ghost, maybe it's a cryptid. When these things call and they kind of crack you out of your everyday reality, and it's like, to use the Matrix metaphor, I mean, it's a little scary, frankly, I think, for most people. I mean, it's scary for me too.
yeah.
And
Well, they don't want to.
you want to be
People don't
comfortable.
like to. Yeah, they like comfort, and they don't like if it's something that they don't understand or they can't explain. And if it gets a little too much for them, their answer is to. And I used to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I made up my mind one time that UFOs were not real. At one time, I was
Mm-hmm.
like 100%. I don't believe. I choose not to believe in them. Why? Because it creeped me out. The thought of
Mm-hmm.
something that I had no control over, that could creep in my bedroom and abduct me one night. I mean, that's
Right.
nothing that's
Right.
comfortable to think about. So your
Yeah.
defense mechanism is to say, well, it's not real. But
Right.
that's not true. And whenever it's consciousness and belief. There's something so strange about this because it's whenever you open your windows and this information starts to come in, you're like, wait a minute, holy cow! There's so
Mm-hmm.
much more to reality than what I thought, or what they want us. And I sound like a
Mm-hmm.
conspiracy crackpot when I use the word "what they." You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
But I mean that's true. I
There's
mean
truth to
what
it. Yeah.
they want us to believe.
I mean, I think the they is corporations in cahoots with the government. I mean, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the quarterly results. And to have you, Danny, you and I, and other people out there, embracing a mystical path. I think the UFO is a call to sort of say, you know what, I. It's kind of like the problem is that when you start to talk to someone who is not into it, just like I was, years ago, I hadn't read the right stuff. I hadn't
Yeah,
understood the right things. And so when you start to go down the path of reading the right things and having certain experiences and talking to certain people, you realize that, well, what you're saying too is reality is dreamlike, and
yeah,
it's not 100% wrapped tight. I mean, this is what physics is telling us, that there's I mean, particles are entangled that are potentially uh, great distances away, um, that things sometimes if I will influence the outcome of an experiment by being the experimenter. It's bizarre. I mean, quantum physics is telling us that there's mostly empty space between particles, and what we see as reality is kind of provisional. I mean, just to
absolutely.
take for example, this cup, is this cup, where did these particles, they were rocks once. They were rocks that how were they formed? Thousands of years. Where were they formed? Um, let's look at all that deep history that goes back to like the formation of stars, right? And then
Absolutely.
here it is now gathered up. It's a cup, right? What's going to happen when it breaks and when it crumbles, when it becomes refuse, when those particles get scattered? What about 10 million years from now? These things are provisional, just like we are,
And
and
actually we're getting ready. We're gonna have to jump to a break, and we've got a great question that's popped up here by Liv. But I tell you what, Liv, since we're so close to the break, we'll wait until after the break, and we'll read your question then. But thank you so much for popping in. I see you, Lisa. Hey, Christy and Liv. Thank you guys so much for popping in the chat here. But yeah, we're going to cut to the break. Then, Liv, we'll get your question up as soon as we get back from the break. But yes, and Mike, one real thing before we cut to the break is we're all made of stardust. So everything.
star stuff.
Yeah, star stuff. But I tell you what, guys, hang tight here. We got Mike. Say your last name.
Fiorito.
Fiorito. We'll be right
Frodo.
back, guys. After this message.
Frodo, like Lord of the Rings.
There we go.
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today.
It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
All right, guys, we are back. And if you're just now tuning in, we've been talking to Mike Fiorito. He's an award-winning author and professor of the English language and music geek and UFO geek, a lot of geekism. But I tell you what, Mike, I want to do this because, Liv Light, she always cranks out some fantastic questions. So we want to get this question up here real quick. Let's see. Welcome, Mike. All right. In your research with musicians, have you found a large percentage of creative souls having experience with interdimensional beings? Fantastic question, Liv.
Great question. Yeah. Great question, Liv. And hi, nice to see you. What's interesting is that musicians, people who are songwriters and people who are creatives, they tend to be tuned in to, I have a friend, I know, Danny, you've heard of, he's a bluegrass legend, Peter Rowan. I wrote a book about him, and he receives music from dakinis, from basically goddess spirits and dreams. So yeah, I think that people who are creatives, Paul McCartney woke up with Yesterday fully kind of intact, the tune. And he's not alone. Many musicians and artists and scientists, the DNA molecule was conceived of. He was either on a psychedelic plant or it was a dream. I'm not sure. It gets kind of foggy which one. But I think people who are open to these things, once you start looking in at the phenomena, it looks back, I think. I see another question.
Yeah, we've got one from Christiane Houghton. She says, I had an experience with ghost music. I walked into my house and heard music without a source, checked everywhere, and there was no music playing within my house. What's your feeling on this phenomenon?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question and nice to see you. Thank you for asking it. I had people have weird experiences or inexplicable experiences, I should say. So there's one Dean Radin, he's been a researcher in psi researcher, and he was he got a story from, I think his name is Michael Schumer. Michael Schumer is a debunker. He's like a
Yes,
traditional
sure.
materialist, and he's sort of a pain in the neck to the UFO community, and because he's just debunker without giving it a chance, without thinking enough. And so he describes an experience that he had. So I'm vaguely remembering, but it's something like akin to what was just said. That he and his wife, they had just gotten married, and his wife was a great uncle or something, and he wasn't there. He had passed away. And on the night that they got married, they hear this music coming from somewhere in the house, and they don't know what it is. And they go and they search, and they find in the attic or something, they find there's a radio playing that's never played before, and it's playing something that was a special song. And uncanny thing, it just started playing as if coming, connecting from the dead, saying, "Here I am, this song." And then that radio never played again. And Michael Schumer, who's a debunker, who's one of these people that just doesn't easily believe or accept these kinds of things, I had to say, well, this kind of knocked my worldview a little bit around, but yet he's committed to his beliefs. So yeah, I do think that it's interesting because some people will say that when they have an encounter experience, it's eerily silent. And maybe there's a hum, maybe there's some kind of mechanical low grade hum. I'd be curious to know what that frequency is. And we haven't even talked about frequencies. That's why I said
Oh,
journeys into sound. That's a whole other realm of there's music that we all kind of recognize as music, and then there's things like binaural beats, which I
let me
experimented with. Yeah,
Well, let me ask you this because this kind of is your expertise. And,
yeah.
one of the things that I find, super interesting, I've always found super interesting in the paranormal world, especially in the, paranormal investigating, is the EVPs. And, I'm somebody who, I'm a rational person, so
Hmm.
and they're like, well, you believe in all this stuff. Yeah. And I'm rational because it's not irrational to believe in these things. Um, but when you look at EVPs, I've always found so very interesting because I thought, what could that possibly be? If it isn't some type of communication from another realm, what else could it be? And, sound waves what happens to sound waves over a period of time? Do they eventually like decay, fall
Mm,
off? Like in physics, there's a new theory that they believe that light may decay after a period of time and actually start to slow down.
mm,
So with sound waves, do
mm,
sound waves just keep traveling on forever? And
mm.
do we just happen to pick up an old conversation from 1644? Or do you know what what's
Yeah,
your thought?
yeah. Well, I guess it depends. Like, so say if it's a sound like a tap. So if I just make a tap, it has vibration, and that probably has a duration, and then I would say it goes away. I'm no expert, by the way, on this, but if I send a radio frequency, if I send a radio broadcast, that will probably keep going, like in the movie Contact. They
Yeah.
the non-human intelligence detects a radio broadcast, and it turns out to be Hitler's broadcast from the Berlin Olympics. And what they do is they take the broadcast, and then the military is freaked out because it's like, oh, this Hitler's, they're sending this back to us. But what they send back is it's really, when they piece it together, it's instructions in 3 dimensions on how to build a time machine, basically a space, a travel machine.
Yeah. Okay,
Uh,
fantastic. That is Carl Sagan's
yeah,
story.
yeah, star stuff. I mean, the
Star
book is
stuff.
great too.
I
How
love
this
Carl
guy
Sagan.
who's a PhD in what a and like you, I'm rational, and I'm
Yeah.
very, very much rooted in rational. But you have scientists, the quantum mechanics, quantum physicists like Erwin Schrodinger and
Yes.
Heisenberg. I mean, they became mystics. They were like, this stuff is mind blowing.
Well, thanks to him, though, thanks to Schrodinger, is nothing exists until it's observed. So what does that tell you about your consciousness? That tells you right there, Mike, that there is
Yeah,
another reality that exists that doesn't exist until we create it. So
absolutely. Yep.
it's a little
Yeah.
nuts. So I tell you this, I do, because we do got some questions coming in, and we are unlimited, and gosh, there's so
Yeah.
much that we can rabbit hole and talk about. But Liv's got another question. What is your experience with the best Hertz frequency? I'm sorry, I'm trying to connect
Yeah.
with source. There are different claims to 432, 369, 528, 963 hertz, etc. Believe music is very healing, but which for connection? Very healing for connection. Live lives to get me all tongue tied too. By the way, uh, so hopefully you can understand that question as much
Yeah.
as I jacked it up reading it.
Yeah, I mean, great question. There's a guy, if anyone, and Liv, if you've heard of him, Stephen Halpern, who's much more of an expert than I am on this stuff. Stephen Halpern's he's a new age, he's a founding father of new age music, and writes, he creates music that's in those frequencies, and they have different applications. So I don't know for sure, but I would go to his website. He actually wrote a blurb for the book. Um, he
Nice.
read he read some of the book. He didn't read all of it because he said, I'm not going to continue reading it. He said, I'm seeing in your book things that I'm working on in my book, so I don't want it to bias me. But if you go to stephenhalpern.com, and he has a whole range of stuff to talk about along with his music. If I can say to that effect, Liv, uh, in the research I did for this book, I went to sound baths, and so they have chimes and bowls, and they're ringing at different frequencies. And so oftentimes what they'll do is connect which bowls they may use during certain ceremonies. They may even use, some cases there are gongs that they use, and the gongs will be connected to horoscope. They'll be connected to time of the year, and so on. And so people have done deep, deep research, and this goes back to Chinese mystics long, long time ago. Um, but now, in our Western culture, we have the benefit of these kinds of things. So I've sat through, and I can tell you, if you sit through uh, a gong a gong yoga, you are going to go places. You are going to have encounters. You're going to hear things. Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute wrote about this kind of stuff, where he had he would return back to a place, and he had non-human intelligence, very much in the way that people have encounter experiences, that telling him, trying to educate him, be funny, trying to educate him to teach human beings how to become better people, to be more protective of the planet, to acknowledge the interconnectedness of things. So when you start to use these tools, I mean, some have maybe more calming effects, some are more meditative. So I would explore the different ways that you can go about this stuff. I went to a sound bath, and I remember running to it. It's New York, so I'm like, get on the subway, and the subway's late. You sort of get there, you're huffing and puffing. Get out of my way! I'm going to yoga. Ah, ah. And then I lied down. I'm thinking I'm never gonna relax because my heart's thumping. Man, the sound, the chimes, just they engulf you. It's like ocean waves of sound, and you go places, and you start to hear things. So these are very powerful tools. Now, if you introduce, like, and I'm not encouraging these things. I'm not encouraging these things. I'm just saying, if you introduce uh, you know a, a sacred plant into that matrix, that's even that becomes even more powerful. Um, I did go to a San Pedro ritual. A Colombian shaman held this ritual. It was beautiful. It was just full of love and inviting you to be respectful to nature, to each other, to celebrate this life we live. Um, I went with my wife, and it was just beautiful and moving, and it took you deep into a place in your heart. That was my experience. But that was a
Nice.
long-winded answer. I hope I answered that, Liv.
Oh no,
I think
I
that's
thought
a
it was
great question.
perfect. Liv comes up with some great ones. She really does. The and she even talks about the crystal sound bowls, and the gongs, ancestral connections,
Yeah.
and the so. But your experience was out of this world, I'm assuming.
It was incredible, and there's meditation, which is one thing, but when you add a sound to it, it almost is like it's very powerful, and I'm gonna say automatic. And even if you don't, a lot of times people will go in there. I was told by I spoke with the gong master. He said you get, like, the husband goes and his wife goes in there. He goes, I'm just here for her. I was gonna go get a drink, but I guess I'll go sit down and do this
It's
thing
like
with
going to getting a pedicure with the wife. Yeah, I'm just here because she wants me
exactly
here. Yeah, right. Those things
right.
feel great.
And then
Uh,
winds up with tears, and because you go to places emotionally, uh, and just profound experiences that you may. I had experiences where I was hearing things like argumentative. Funny, it was like this old kind of, uh, uh, you know, kind of strega. We call it in Italian. It means like witch, but it doesn't. It could be like grandma's a strega, but like arguing with me, and I'm thinking, is that me? Am I arguing with myself, or who am I talking to? But it's as if these, we are connected, that there's a veil over us that kind of blocks those communications. Music, meditation, creativity, um, using sound. There's all kinds of ways to achieve these things. And that's why I said at the beginning, music is a contact. It's just another contact modality for the various ways that people might um, lift off, into, in a way, into and out of. It's both, because it's not just out
Absolutely.
there; it's in here.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Uh, one more question here from Live
Yeah,
Light.
yeah,
Do you think we can reincarnate a mystical sound experience just at home with guided meditation? I think absolutely.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, and they have. There's stuff that you could get. I was playing with binaural beats, and binaural beats. So what it is you have two frequencies in. Robert Monroe developed this with other people, uh, other technical people. You put on a headset, and you'll hear two frequencies, and they're at different frequencies, and it creates this warble effect. And what happens is you go into like a hypnagogic state, where it's that pre-dream state. Now, if you keep going with it, it's going to go beyond that. When I can relate to, maybe I'm sure some of your listeners live, and other folks can. You're sitting somewhere. You're not trying to sleep, but you're kind of falling off, and you have these hypnagogic images. They're kind of bizarre. They don't really make sense. if you kept at it, they would form into a narrative, and they would become like a dream. Tibetan yogis feel that when we dream, that this is a dream, and just becoming lucid in your dreams is a practice for becoming lucid in your life, because this is just a continuation of dream. And we're confabulating all of that we see. I mean, a lot of it's kind of consensus. There's a consensus dream. I mean, let's face it, everything we see, I look around, is something that someone made. It's something that comes from someone's mind.
That,
Um,
yep, say it all the
I
time.
mean, nature is pure imagination. When you think about it, like nothing looks like nature. Nothing looks like oceans or trees. Isn't that
Yeah,
kind of interesting?
yeah,
Man-made stuff, people-made stuff. It's kind of, geometric and, you know, but nature is just it's so fertile. It doesn't have to be like this. It could just be
absolutely.
water, rain.
Yeah, I say that all the time. It's great question, Liv. Great question. Unfortunately, we are
Thank you.
getting close on time here. I
Yeah.
do want to give a quick chance, real quick, for Mike, you to talk about your new book, and where can the viewers and the listeners purchase this book, learn more and more about you, and kind of the stuff that you do.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's such an honor, and I have fun with you. You have a great sense of humor, and that's it's so welcome. Sometimes in the UFO community, we get like hushed and we get tightened up. Um, so if you go to MikeFiorito.com, that's Fiorito, MikeFiorito.com, you'll see all of the books. I do have copies. I do have some copies on hand of UFO Symphonic. It publishes on February 1st, which is St. Bridget's Day, from Ireland, St. Bridget. She was known to be. She had a deep interest in fairies and uh, pagan mythologies and folklore, which is for a Catholic saint. Uh, Everything is available if you go to Amazon or your favorite. It's not just available at Amazon. If you go to your favorite service, you'll find them there. And I'm happy to, if you're in I can send it in the United States, of course, internationally, but it's a little bit expensive sometimes. I send stuff to Australia, and it was quite expensive, and Malta.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're cool with it, I'm cool with it. I'm just, I'm not trying to make money on shipping. I'm just trying to basically, cover the cost. You don't get rich selling books, to be honest. I'm a professor. It's bolsters your career. It's interesting. You're in colleagueship with people like you, Danny, and people like your listeners, like Jeff Kripal and Diana Pasulka, and that's the joy. That's why I do this stuff, is to be in conversation with people I admire.
Well, I definitely admire you, Mike. You're a very interesting guy. It's and not, I don't think there's anybody out there. I mean, well, there's not a lot of people out there that are connecting sound and music with the paranormal, the supernatural, which is, something, like I said, very interesting. And who knows? I mean,
Mm.
so much that, we can learn just from this. I've got to be
Mhm.
honest. I got to catch the first book. I still have to catch up with the first book that we were on here last time. So I've got to grab one of those for myself, because that sounds interesting. Real quick, where can we find the source with the headphones? You said the two types of sounds that can kind of kick you in. Who
Um,
is that?
so, gosh, it's his name is Mark Certo, Certo. I
Okay.
forget what it's
If
called.
we can we find something maybe on YouTube or something if we do a search, or
Yeah, he's very proprietary about if you go to like Facebook, you'll find him and then you'll see his website and you could go. He's very proprietary, the way he gives you access to it. Of course, the Monroe Institute as well. And
okay.
I would stick with those kind of pillars because they're standards. Mark was very much involved in creating what's called hemisync, this whole apparatus. But Mark Cherto, and I forget what it's called. It's like the try something mind. That I just don't remember what it's called.
It's
off
okay.
the top of my head.
We will definitely give it a search. But I tell you what, Mike, thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, man. You were amazing, great guest. I'm telling you, an hour goes by so quick. And guys, be sure to check out Mike and check out his books. And I tell you what, Mike, like I said, you are part of the 2-time club. We're going to make you a 3-time club. You have a good one, brother.
Tommy, 2 times. I can't wait to come back. Thank you so much. Be well, and all have a great day. Take care, Danny.
All right, guys. Hey, first of all, I want to say thank you, Liv. Thank you, Christy, guys, for your fantastic questions with Mike. You guys be sure to check out his books, man. I've got to check them out, too. Now we've got 2 of them that we really got to check out. But if you guys have not done so, like and subscribe to the podcast. Share it to your friends. Tell your mom, tell your sister, tell your dog, tell your cat. Tell them to hit that like button. Smash that like button. I always say smash. They say smash the like button. Anyway, smash the like button. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Also, we are broadcasting live from the EU United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 New Orleans. Like always, Paranormal Junkies, be sure to head over to the experiencersupport.org and show us some love at Heed the World on Patreon, and also check out some awesome articles written by our very own, TESA's very own, Ryan Stacy. He always publishes some very interesting investigations that he's covering, so head over to the experiencersupport.org and check those out. And anything else am I forgetting to leave out? Oh, that's right. Show your boy some love. Danny Whitson, Magic and Comedy on Facebook, at Super Magic Boy on Instagram. Give me a follow. Like I said, I post where I'm going to be. So if you want to catch any of my upcoming shows, I even talk about this podcast in my show. Yeah. So what can I be saying? Who knows? You got to come see a show to find out. Anyways, folks, be sure to hop back. We'll be right back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. with another fantastic, interesting guest. And I tell you what, like always, keep the paranormal normal. And I will see you guys next Tuesday, 7 p.m., same place. All right, that does it for this episode of Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. A big shout out for tonight's awesome guest, and a bigger shout out for everyone who tuned in. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. And like always, be sure to stay curious, heed the world, and keep the paranormal normal. I'm your host, Danny Whitson, and this has been Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.